Back to that real-life nightmare at sea for two divers and the teen heroes and their dad who came to their rescue. We're going to talk with all of them in a moment, but we begin with NBC's Kerry Sanders.
Just days after being lost at sea,
you take care of your equipment, it'll take care of you.
Tim and Paula Allen still can't believe they survived 28 hours floating adrift in the Gulf of Mexico with only their dive gear and determination to keep them alive.
Well, this was my wife's security blanket.
The spear gun may have provided a sense of security, but it couldn't fend off the fear and hallucinations as both battled exhaustion and dehydration.
Everything's wet.
A veteran police officer, experienced boaters, but on this dive trip, the Allens admit they made a rookie mistake. They both went in the water, and no one was topside, adding to the errors.
This time, we didn't really tell anybody, and nobody really knew we were missing.
20 miles from shore, the Allens had anchored their boat, but what they didn't take into account were the strong currents. When they surfaced from their dive, they drifted and were too exhausted to make it back to their boat. They say it was gut-wrenching as they watched their 24-foot vessel disappear over the horizon.
You got to be in some decent shape to fight the current. I mean, it'll carry off in a heartbeat.
The next day, Patrick Pinder and his two sons anchored in the Gulf for their own dive. The boys spotted something in the distance, and finally, a happy ending. Tim and Paula were rescued.
Their quick reaction actually, saved our lives. If we'd have been out there another 15, 20 minutes, there's no telling we'd be alive.
Just thank God, because I thought we were dead.
Doctors say the couple may not have survived much longer. They had drifted 12 to 14 miles from their anchored boat. The Coast Guard didn't even know they were missing.
It's incredibly lucky on their part, and I'm glad it worked out well for them.
Lucky to be alive and lucky to be able to warn others what not to do. For today, Kerry Sanders, NBC News, Miami.
Tim and Paula Allen are with us exclusively this morning, along with their rescuers, Garrett and Patrick Pinder, and their dad, Patrick Sr. Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
Tim and Paula, I really feel like I'm looking at a miracle here. Do you feel the same way about it?
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely.
At what point in the water did you start to think, you know what, we are not going to make it. We're not going to get back to shore?
It was probably midday, the second day.
Second day.
I started having hallucinations and seeing things that weren't there. And I guess right about 11 o'clock or so is when we saw their boat. They had just pulled up. I saw them drop anchor and put a dive flag up, but I didn't trust my eyes, so I had to confirm it with Paula.
And by that point, Paula, talk to me a little bit about what it was like in that water all those hours. You occasionally would see a boat, but they wouldn't spot you.
No.
You make it through the night. You're freezing cold. You're hallucinating a bit.
At that point, it was like, once we saw the boat, I told him, I says, this is our last chance. If we don't go, we're going to die. We've got to do it.
And the boat at that point was miles away from you. We're not talking 200 feet. We're talking around 6 miles, right?
6 miles.
What made you think you would get to it?
Just that I could look under the water and see that the current was going in that direction. And I figured the current was probably a 3 or 4 mile an hour current. 6 miles. If they were going to do a 1-tank dive, they'd be there at least an hour. If they were going to do a 2-tank, they'd be there 2 hours. And I knew we could make it in 2 hours. But, we just prayed that we'd be able to.
Meanwhile, Gary, you and your brother Patrick and your dad, you've gone for a day of diving. Your dad is actually under the water at that point. You spot these folks in the water. What went through your mind?
Well, we initially seen them, and it was just like they looked like they were in distress, and we knew we had to help them.
So how far away from you were they at that point?
I'd say about a good 150 yards, 100 yards, 150 yards.
So, Patrick, you guys take off in the boat. You leave Dad, obviously. He's underwater. He doesn't know what's going on. You go in the boat. When you reach the Allens, did it even cross your mind, we're saving these people's lives?
Not until they said, oh, my God, you just saved our lives. We've been out here for a day.
Could you believe that they had even been out there for a day? It's a miracle that they survived that.
It was actually shocking when they said that. I mean, right after we helped them take off their gear and, help pull them into the boat. So
you got back. Meanwhile, you've come up from the water, Pat, and you're a little miffed because you don't see the boat anywhere.
Yep, they were gone.
When they came back with these two folks, you must have felt a tremendous sense of pride in these boys.
Yeah, I was very proud of them. I mean, they did all the right things. They responded accordingly. I was still a little confused on why I had some guests in my boat because I had no idea where they came from.
Well, they came from the middle of the ocean, it turned out, and you did not, as it turns out, do everything you should have done. You learned some lessons, didn't you?
Yes.
That if you repeat
Yes.
and you go back out, which I assume you will?
Oh, absolutely.
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 And what will you do differently this time?
Not to be as complacent. You know, I'm a police officer, and the biggest thing we preach against is become complacent when you're doing traffic stop. You know, it's just an everyday thing. And we started treating diving like that. So now we're going to take some extra precautions, you know, file float plans, make sure we have, if not another person in the boat, another boat with us at all times. That way, in the event that something like this happens again, we won't be out eating raw shrimp.
And not just this safety sausage that you were waving back and forth.
Correct.
All right, well, thank you all for being here. Great job, guys. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Be careful. Thank you.